All right. So tonight we're going to talk a little about insurance. This lecture won't go that long because also we want to do the review for the midterm. I'll do that in a separate video. But yeah, just like in personal finance, there's people who pay interest and there's people who earn interest. And in personal finance in the course, there's people who watch the review video and do well on the test, and there's people who don't watch the review video and find life a little bit tougher. So anyway, you'll definitely want to watch that. I'm not giving away the test, but I definitely will try and focus your study and you know whatever. I can do it in good conscience because you're gonna if you know the exam, you'll know you know some of the more important bits of personal finance. So auto and homeowner insurance. Some of you will know a lot about this. Some of you may not know that much about it, but we'll review and look at some of the details so you'll have at least a little bit better idea. And again, I don't know. I sound like I'm a speculator, a gambler, and all this other stuff, but this is everything in life has got it's based on risk. There's certain things that you don't want to take risk with, but there's certain things where you got to do a financial calculation to decide. And in auto insurance, there's certain insurance that's required, that's mandated because, basically the parts where you're going to cause harm to somebody else, you definitely need to be covered. You need to show that you can pay for that either, directly in some cases or have the insurance for it in 99% of the cases. But other things like collision and towing and things like that, you have options, and you have even on deductibles, you have options to raise the deductible, lower the deductible, and it takes a little bit of judgment, and it makes a huge difference in the monthly outflow and the amount of available money that's going to be available for investments and other things. So anyway, you need to keep track of these things. So anyway, we're talking both home and auto, personal assets from liability at a certain point too. I mean, depends. The more assets you have, the more liability insurance you need. But there's always a minimum that's required, especially in auto terms. And in home, unless you own the home outright, yeah, you don't get a whole lot of say so because you may think it's your home, but if they're holding the note on it, if they in essence the bank owns that home till you pay it off, so they want to make sure that their property is insured, and they'll make that conditional on the loan. So liability, that's what I was getting to. The liability, when you're messing with somebody else's stuff, you have to make sure that you can pay that off. Now, state of Alaska, for example, has got deep enough pockets. They've got enough money to where they can be self-insured. They don't have to carry auto insurance because if one of their trucks runs into one of your cars or whatever, they'll suck it up and they'll still pay for it, but they're not going to file a claim with the insurance company. They're self-insured. And if you end up, hopefully, some point in life, maybe being a high wealth kind of person, there are certain steps you can go through. I don't know exactly what's involved, but you post a bond or whatever, and assure DMV that you've got the money that would pay for the vehicle to cover the liability. So, got a dog that's going aggressively after some food right now. A lot of disruption around here this week. One of my girls had puppies, 10, so that takes a toll. Anyway, when she wants to eat, she wants to eat. Okay, so anyway, one of the primary things is to maintain your level of wealth, of course, but again, you need to make sure that the insurance premiums don't um, you know decrease your level of wealth at the get-go. Okay, so managing risk. We have different things. There's everything in life has some risk involved in it. And to be risk free is to be, well, boring. I mean, you're just waiting around to die at that point. You're going to have to get out there and do something at some point. If you cross the street, you've accepted some risk. Um, is that a reasonable risk? Yeah, as long as you look both ways or whatever. But if you do it carelessly or you don't manage your risk, then you become, negligent, as they would say. So anyway, avoiding risk is Yeah, you can avoid risk to a certain extent, but you cannot, eliminate risk. And what you're looking at really is risk reduction or risk management, or perhaps transferring that risk to another party in terms of insurance. You realize driving a vehicle or having a house, there's a certain amount of risk involved, and you're going to pay an insurance company in this case a premium to accept that risk for you. And the insurance company is going to make money based on the fact that not everybody is going to have a bad day on the same day. They don't mind paying off a vehicle because they've got whatever thousands, millions of people they insure, and if they have to cover a few claims, that's not a big deal as long as it's not everybody at once. And so that's an insurance model. And you'll see when sometimes people will misuse the term, like in health insurance, they'll talk about pre-existing conditions. That's that's a thing, but that's not an insurance matter. That's more of a societal good or a welfare kind of thing. But you can't, for example, have a car that's pre-crashed and go down to the insurance company and say, "Hey, I need to get insurance on this car." And they say, "Well, where is it?" "Well, no, I crashed it." It's like, well, you should have had insurance on it beforehand. So with health issues, it becomes much more complex. But in auto and home, I mean, home again, you go down to get insurance and they say, well, what's the condition of the home? Oh, it burned down last week. Well, yeah, no, that's a little late for insurance. So the true, definition of insurance, there are no, you know, pre-existing conditions in terms of auto and home. And when they do use it in health insurance, they use it for convenience sake, but it's that's not insurance. So anyway, so accept risk. Yeah, if you can do that, if you've got the resources, or if it's a low issue, not a whole lot of money involved. Um, and this would be like, say you've got a beater with a heater, and you have to carry the liability insurance, but you opt to say, yeah, I'm not going to carry collision because if I cause the accident, if the accident's my fault, I'm going to suck it up and you know not have insurance cover my own vehicle, and in doing so lower the premium. And sometimes, like I said, it makes sense to do that. You have to look at the age of the vehicle and other things. But anyway, and then the other is to insure against risk, and that's paying this third party, the insurance company, a premium where they accept the risk. And that's quite common, but again, it's not a black and white situation. There's a lot of gray areas. Economic impact, yeah, they always go into this, and it's just not relevant. I mean, you can't say, "Oh, I don't have liability insurance on my car because I lost my job." They'll say, "Then you shouldn't be driving." So anyway, types of insurance: property, so homeowners, things like that; casualty insurance, life insurance, and health insurance. Life insurance we're not going to talk about tonight, but there's a lot of implications on that. Health insurance is a moving target. The current system we have right now, this Affordable Care Act or Obamacare, whatever you want to call it, it was there's no champion behind it. There was nobody who was really for the program as it sits. It was meant to be a transition either to some sort of single payer, with that payer being the government, or private insurance. But nobody wants this sort of hybrid situation that really doesn't serve anybody. But the good news about health insurance right now is, well, right now being the current generation, most of them they have health insurance through their work. But sometimes, again, you might become job locked where you can't quit your job because you'll lose your insurance. So it's not a good situation that we have right now. Insurance company operations. Yep, yep, yep. Anyway, it's got to be a viable business. And we'll talk more about that when we get like into flood insurance, where that is not something that private companies can offer. So here they're going to do auto insurance, for body damage. So most of those prepaid where they sell it like a maintenance plan are typically, if you dig in the details, they're not such a good deal. But regular auto insurance for, you know, body issues from wrecks and stuff are uh, typically a little more straightforward. Obviously, injuries are where the real expense comes in terms of vehicles, um, homeowners insurance, medical insurance, health insurance, long-term care insurance, in case you go in a nursing home. One statistic that kind of was interesting that came out of the COVID thing is, I hate to say it, but if you end up in a long-term care or nursing home, COVID, no COVID, your chances of living more than 6 months are like 50%. It's just not um, a good place to end up at any time. It means that you're some people stay in there, but the norm is 6 months. Um, Disability insurance. So you lose your ability to work. Different kinds in here. Some are, you were a roofer and you fall off the roof. Well, you may not be roofing anymore, but they're not paying up because you could, work in a computer store or sit behind a desk. And so you have to look a little closer on that to figure out what they're actually paying. And then life insurance, fairly straightforward. Pay you if you die. So the only way to collect is by passing away. Types of insurance. So we talked about that. Oh, we're rolling backwards again. I'm sorry. I don't know why this computer does this to me. Uh-huh. And it's still going the wrong way. Okay, here we go. So insurance agents, unfortunately, yeah, they're part of the process. Although as you see more online brokerage, things are getting more common. It's a way to get the cost down a little bit. Um, some insurance companies, they work for State Farm and they sell State Farm. Other ones will sell a range of products, and that's what this guy is here. Many different companies. But again, you've got different insurance companies that are nationwide and may have a local presence, may not. But um, anyway, you need to with the advent of the ability to compare on the internet, it's made it much more competitive. Not necessarily cheaper, but hopefully that'll happen at some point. And the big problem with insurance is, again, getting back into the medical issues and the personal injury attorneys. I've had the unfortunate experience of meeting quite a few attorneys in my life. And not well, I actually did have one personal injury thing where I was involved in an accident, but yeah, I mean, I met the nicest attorneys ever. The only two in Alaska that a friend of mine who's been involved in that business, she really liked, and I was working on a property issue with them, and they were upfront that yeah, the reason they wanted to work with me is because they really despise the type of work they do as personal injury attorneys, because they find liability where liability doesn't exist. All they got to do is convince the jury, and they get paid. So anyway, auto insurance provisions. Yep, the contract between you and the insurance company. Okay, if this is going to happen, sorry, quit. Okay, liability coverage. So this covers things that you do to others. If you do something, you're liable for your actions, right? Now this can be, you know, just a fact of life, or it can be, negligence where you're liable, and in an even more damaging way where you found out, that you were careless. If you get in let's say, a vehicle accident and it's snow and, you just happen to slide across the road and you both crash, that may have one set of damages that are to be done. But if you happen to be, drunk at the same time and this whole thing goes to trial, it could get far worse because then they're going to, decide you're not only liable, but you're also negligent. Same thing has to do with, let's say you have a swimming pool and you don't have a fence. Not a very common thing up here in Alaska, but very common in the lower 48. You need to have a fence or else you'll be determined to be negligent, and it will be more painful to you if there is an accident involved. So, but anyway, he says nothing about fixing your own vehicle. Liability coverage only covers the other person. If you don't have collision, you don't have any coverage to fix your car if you're the one at fault. Policy limits, they always quote them in this, 3-number sequence. So per person injury, all combined, property damage. So you can see that these numbers are quite low. I mean, we're talking, you start hitting some guardrail, the cars involved. It's very quick to get above, the $50,000. So you may want to go a bit higher. So B is the medical coverage part. Applies only to the insured car. Now, different states, I mean, some states it's not exactly what you'd think, where Alaska is actually maybe a bit higher, considerably higher than a place like California, but these are minimums. So typically, if you went to a place like California where it's very litigious, you are going to get sued for a whole lot more than, I mean, this is laughable, $5,000. You can do that at a body shop in a minute. So anyway, these are definitely minimums. But insurance is done by the states. So each state is going to be different. And then uninsured, underinsured. And this happens quite frequently as well, where you hit somebody, they don't have any insurance, and now your insurance would have to cover it if you have the coverage. And then collision. This is the optional one, so is comprehensive. So this insures against the cost of damage to car resulting in which you were at fault. And then comprehensive is all the things like, windshields, theft, um, other items, riots. It becomes an interesting situation when your, car's in the garage and there's a fire in terms of who's going to cover it. And, obviously they're always going to fight over that. Flood damaged, theft. Floods with cars. This is different. Homeowner insurance, you can't get flood insurance from a insurance company. Not without a federal program, but we'll talk more about that. And then the deductible. This also affects. So realistically, the things, if you are interested in getting your insurance lower, and I'm not saying this is, you have to think about it. Can you weather paying $1,000 deductible? Can you, put up with that? If you do, the insurance company is going to give you a quite a bit lower rate. If you don't want to do that, you want a $250 deductible, your rate's going to be a little bit higher. But one of the problems with that is, let's say you say, I want the $250 deductible, but then, you file a claim, and although they reimburse you and you're only out of pocket $250, they may raise your rate. So I always tend to go with a higher deductible because, if you file claims and get on their radar, anyway, they know that, but anyway, you have to figure that out for yourself. And then the other things would be collision. If it's a car that you actually own and it's getting to be older and it's not some classic, um, you may not need collision. But you keep in mind, if you wreck your car, you're done. You're just walking away from it. You're not getting any reimbursement whatsoever from your insurance company. So, but in some cases that makes financial sense. If let's say your collision is $1,000 a year, and your vehicle's worth a couple grand, every 2 years, if you can, you've got some incentive not to get in a wreck, and you're going to be money ahead, on the third year. So anyway, you have to look at the numbers and decide what you want. But comprehensive and collision are optional. Okay. So they've got all the numbers there. Lawyers fees. So again, when you see somebody getting $1 million settlement, the lawyer's going to get the bulk of that. So this is just kind of a reiteration. The liabilities, the collision damage to your own car, the medical, and then the catch-all is the comprehensive. What it depends on, yeah, the value of your car certainly, and also some of the parts. Certain makes they've got charts, they've got people who, in the insurance business, there's a lot of statistician kind of folks who do the analysis and they keep track of current, repair rates and all that. And then other things you probably likely know if you're below age 25 and a male driving a sports car, yeah, you're going to pay more for it. And then they'll also ask you how many miles you drive. And then your driving record is huge. If you've got a DUI, they may not even want to insure you, and you may have to do special provisions to get that um, insurance. Okay, your location. Again, that affects the cost of driving, and obviously up here it affects some of the weather conditions that you might not see in other places. Driver's training. Yeah, if you've had advanced training, school performance if you're younger. Um, but there's nothing wrong with getting several quotes, and especially now, you can get all those quotes, those comparisons done quite easily. And it's not as always just because company advertises. In fact, there's certain companies, as towing banners and having commercials everywhere. I've never found their rates to be very cheap, and I think that's because obviously somebody's got to pay for the airplane to be flying around and all the commercials with the little gecko and the rest of it. That it can't, those marketing costs have got to be paid by somebody. Um, where you live. So go figure. New York would be high. Iowa going to be quite a bit lower. But there's certain things like homeowners insurance. Where you can tell where the tornado alley is, and you can tell what the prevalent conditions are. Um, but then there's some things that you just don't understand. Why would Arizona be high? Anyway, homeowners insurance, you don't have a whole lot of flexibility on this. I did have some damage from, it was kind of sort of related to the earthquake, some broken pipes and stuff, but I was able to file a claim on it. But when I took the insurance agent, it was one of these things where she said, if you file a claim, we can cover it, but, you know, your rates are going to be raised. So it kind of aggravated me. So obviously, it was time to switch insurance companies. Fire, burglary, things like that. But anyway, they have different packages. But one of the conditions for having a loan on a home is that you keep it insured. Here's how they've got it categories. You'll notice that um, flood insurance is not covered in any of these items. So anyway, I don't really, there's no use memorizing these things. Just keep in mind that, whatever your living situation is, renter's insurance, you'll want that because you're not concerned with the structure, but you want to protect your items. Many times landlords also require it, which is kind of strange, but they can. Condo insurance. With a condo, you own everything inside of the paint on that home. So, a lesser coverage is needed. Quite similar to renter's insurance, but a little bit more because you own part of the structure. Whoops. Um, One big thing you'll see with homeowners insurance is replacement versus cash value. And this would be quite shocking. If you don't have replacement cost, you can be, quite disappointed. Let's say there's a fire, and most of the time with fires, some things get burned, but more often other things get water damaged and smoke damaged, and in any case, they're still damaged and need to be, thrown out. But let's say all your clothes or your, TV and stuff like that got destroyed. If they do the cash value, you're going to be shocked how little your stuff is worth. When you say, "Oh, it's a great TV. I paid, $800 for it." Well, they're going to look at that and go, "Well, that's an older model and it's been used. It's worth about $200." And so when you go to whatever store you go to replace that TV, you're going to be looking at, money out of pocket, and especially with clothes and things like that. So you definitely want to figure out, and maybe pay the extra to get that replacement cost so that you get a new TV and you get replacement for your clothes and stuff. But at least figure out whether or not you've got it. The replacement is going to be more expensive, but it's up to you. Homeowners insurance, yep, gets quite involved. You have to read each policy. But one of the things, especially if it's a total loss, is trying to determine what you actually had. So that's where, just doing sort of a sweep with a video camera or GoPro or something like that is quite useful in establishing what you had. That'll make the insurance process go much quicker. Obviously, you don't keep it right in the same place where it's going to get burned up with all your stuff if that were to happen. Personal property floater. So if you're ever getting insurance, and let's say you're really into photography, or you've got jewelry or something like that, and you feel, well, I'm going to get this insurance policy because I want coverage for all my items, and you'll be mistakenly usually under the impression that your expensive items are covered. But if you read deeply in the policy, you'll realize that although your policy is whatever hundreds of thousands of dollars, there's specific limits and categories, and there may be a $2,000 or $4,000 limit on jewelry. And so you think your stuff is covered, but only $2,000 to $4,000 of it is. So if you ever have, a single item or a certain category items that's quite expensive, maybe a gun collection or something like that, um, you need some sort of addendum to the insurance contract, and that could be called a floater, a rider, just an addendum. But anyway, the big picture is that you need to be truthful and tell them what you have and make sure it's delineated on the policy if you expect it to be covered. This would be the thing where the kid falls in the pool, or you got some rake, or ice on the stairway. Something that, especially if it can show perhaps negligent on your part. And then other things are, if your house is burned down, let's say they're going to give you a new house, build you a new house, but you got to live in a hotel for 6 months. That's not going to be cheap. And a lot of these other things, there's other provisions that might be included on that policy that might make it quite important. Um, Insurance, yeah, value of the home, deductible, degree of protection, discounts, but the list gets so much longer. Up here, you'll see some weird things where, if you have a wood stove in your home, they may say, we don't insure those. Or if you're in a different area where you've got a regular shingle roof, like a cedar shake roof, those things are in fire areas are kind of dangerous. So, or at least they consider them dangerous. So anyway, then other things, I've had people who have been, trying to do horse-related businesses, and they figure out they can't get insurance because they're too far from the first responder, the whatever, the fire station or whatever. And when you are applying for homeowners insurance, they may ask you, or they may research themselves, the distance to the fire station, the distance to fire hydrants. Do you have, smoke alarms? Do you have all these other things, burglar alarms? And so they can structure it however they want, but The tendency is much more factors rather than less. Same thing with liability. Whoops, we're going the wrong way again. Okay, so obviously we had a few tornadoes here in Oklahoma, Idaho, yeah, and then Florida hurricanes, things like that. Texas, a little bit of both. But anyway, rates are going to change depending on where you live. Strategies, increase your deductible, same thing. Improve your protection, so get a few more discounts. Yeah, I don't. They do this where they say, well, if you had your auto insurance with us, and if you have your home insurance, we'll give you a break. Staying with the same insurance company, sometimes, but you got to shop around. Really, it depends. And then also different vehicles. I've got some larger trucks, and some of these insurance companies will call them commercial vehicles and claim I need a separate policy, and other ones will insure them under my private policy. So it could, if you have more complex issues, it may necessitate more insurance companies, and a whole bunch of individual policies can get quite expensive. Unreimbursed medical expenses, so deductibles, insurance, stop loss, coverage limits. So they're getting into a different realm here, but medical expenses. Um, if you have co-insurance, this can get very, very difficult. I used to have two different insurance coverages, and it was just so much paperwork. I canceled the one and went with just one, even though it's slightly less coverage. Just trying to get these people to pay when they want to fight about who's insured and who's not. Stop loss provision, coverage limits. We'll cover that in another section. So renter's insurance, just covering your items inside that you're renting. So it doesn't matter whether it's a house, a condo, or apartment. It just means they're only insuring the contents. They're not insuring the structure. And then an umbrella policy. You don't have to be that wealthy. I've got a general liability policy because I've got, a business and a home and things like that. And it's not that hard to get. But there's other things you can do with your business to make yourself less likely to get sued. So that's just kind of a quick and dirty on auto and home insurance. There's a video that will be out there this week, and it sort of shows some of the scams and some of the reasons why auto insurance is as high as it is. Health and disability insurance. This, like I say, is there's um, this whole situation is kind of in flux right now. My apologies that obviously I didn't have anything to do with the current system, but it is not good. The only thing that makes it sort of doable is that when you look at like the Affordable Care Act or Obamacare, whatever you want to call it, it's only covering about 3% of the people, not even. So you get the majority of folks that are covered by their employer. And a lot of times that might be one of the driving factors why you decide to work where you are. Medicare, this means you're older, right? You're going to be of retirement age and you can get that. Medicaid, this is, sort of a welfare program. So what happens a lot of times is people will apply for the Affordable Care Act, but their income is not such, and so they actually end up in Medicaid, so they're not paying. Now they're not getting great treatment, obviously, but they're not part of this program. Medicaid CHIP, these are um, families with children, and then other could be, some sort of private insurance. Now the uninsured, you could argue all day about this because it could be, they'll say, oh, these are all the undocumented aliens, or it could be people with money who are like, nope, I'm self-insured. And if you do go to the doctor and you say, hey, I'm don't have insurance, I'm paying cash, you'll find out that the prices are considerably lower because if you have one of these plans, I work with the VA quite a bit, and they don't pay the full amount, so um, it's a kind of a silly program because the doctors and the hospitals will charge more knowing that they're not going to get say they know they're only going to get 60% reimbursed. Well, they just up their rates by 60%, and then Medicare pays them 60% less, and go figure the hospital gets the amount they wanted at the first part. So if you go to a hospital or physician and say, I'm going to be paying cash, I'm going to be paying this, for this myself, more than likely you will get that lower rate. So, but anyway, I'm not saying to do this, but I'm not saying that um, these are not people that are necessarily dropped out of the system. They may be people who were opted not to be in the system. So, health insurance, private insurance companies, or the government? Yep, yep, yep. Can be huge. The costs are rising. I mean, if you haven't realized it, that the situation. I mean, I've referred to it earlier on when we talk about minimum wage. People talk about a $15 minimum wage. I'm not in favor of any sort of mandatory minimum wage. What I am in favor of is a market-driven minimum wage, and if the market was allowed to work, that minimum wage would be in the 20s. It'd be like 23, 25. If high range salaries, if there's that same comparison between a lot of money in terms of an executive, or not executive, but a well-paying job was making 30 grand a year, and minimum wage was $3 an hour. Well, now a regular good paying job is maybe 100 grand, and minimum wage is like $7. The proportions are all off, and that has to do with basic supply and demand with labor. And some of these things aren't going to go away. Some of that is automation, but more importantly, it's outsourcing the jobs and an influx of unskilled labor. So anyway, it's complex, but a government mandated $15 is that's not going to help you too awful much, not as much as a market driven, um, market forces reducing the supply and increasing the demand. That will drive wages up and get them back in line with what they should be. So anyway, cost of health insurance, 1 in 5. Again, this is their number. But again, how that on insurance occurs right now, frankly, a lot of times it's just too high. The insurance, the Affordable Care Act stuff leaves people in positions where the insurance is so high that they just frankly can't get it done. Um, so talked about pre-existing conditions. I don't want to alienate anybody else, but I'm saying that those things need to be covered, but to call that insurance is going to lead to problems because there's no way a program is going to be able to sustain itself when it's going to be by design an outflow of money. There is no situation in which the insurance breaks even. And if they try to do that, which they have tried to do now, you end up with insurance that's so expensive. Insurance is to protect you from a huge outlay of cash. And if your insurance policy itself is a huge outlay of cash, then it's not insurance. So, other coverage, rehabilitation, mental health, coming along, pregnancy. Now they're treating pregnancy like it's an illness. A little controversy there. Dental insurance. Dental insurance and vision insurance are actually pretty good because they've got sort of their private sector niche where they're done and there's competition. You know, the cost for vision care and the cost for some of the laser eye surgeries are actually quite competitive for what you're getting because it's a free market and it actually works. There's not as many, people involved taking a little chunk, and most of the money you pay in a situation like this is going for your service and not for administration. But anyway, expenses not covered by private insurance. So they do have, medical spending accounts. And I've told you about on the income tax that, you have to be pretty sick. You have to have over $10,000 in unreimbursed medical expenses before they're even deductible. So I'm not going to try and defend the current medical system because it's indefensible, and hopefully, something good will come. I'm not going to offer an opinion on which direction it should go, but it needs to go a particular direction, one way or the other, because this, compromised situation serves nobody. So back to Medicare. If you're over 65, then yeah. And then the big deal was prescription drugs. But anyway, they spend a lot of time on Medicare. You'll hear that a lot because older folks vote. So they do get a fair amount of attention. Medigap, it was supposed to cover just private insurance companies that supplement Medicare. Um, we're not quite there yet, so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on Medicare. Medicaid, this is like welfare type things, and I'm not, I don't mean that in a pejorative way. I mean, you can be blind, disabled, needy families. There's different ways. When I say welfare, I don't mean it in a negative sense. I just mean it's not insurance. It's a program that is designed to have money flowing out of it. There's not going to be money coming in. State by state, and this gets a little wacko. This is one of the reasons why Social Security is in so much trouble, because since it's made by the state, again, there's some lawyers, you may have seen them, Bender, guys with cowboy hats. Basically, they'll get a bounty offered to them by the state, and the state will pay them $1,500 for every person that they can get who's on some sort of, um, you know, Medicaid disability program, and get them over onto the Social Security, which is a federal program. So it makes great sense for the state, but it puts a burden on the federal program. But a lot of gamesmanship. Affordable Care Act. These guys are still, you know, pretty much, yeah, it is a contentious political issue. Long-term care. So this would be if you're, in a nursing home, assisted living facility, and it could even be at home. So different people have different things in life. If I was ever in a situation like this, I'd go overseas where it's quite a bit cheaper. But yeah, if you want to stay by your family and all that, the expenses of these long-term care facilities can be prohibitively expensive, and probably not a lot of fun either. There is insurance, but the longer you wait, if you try to do this when you actually have some sort of issue that's going to put you in one of these facilities, you may just not even be able to get the coverage. But it may be an option when you're younger to, pay into a plan that, you know, might cover you later. So the age in which you do it and your health condition. Shop around, compare premiums. So, this is kind of a insidious thing because insurance and a lot of these, you know, medical issues that where your data is available online, and you have to be very careful about protecting your medical data because in certain cases it's protected by the HIPAA provisions, which protect your medical information, but and other times, if you put it out there on the internet voluntarily or you sign some sort of, end user license, anyway, you can end up with your medical information um, available to these insurance companies, and they, if they have it, they can use it to disqualify you. So you want to keep those issues fairly closely guarded. Family's health history. They would love to have access to DNA data on you because they can tell a lot about you, um, you know, based upon your DNA and your family history and the rest of it. Disability. So this is to, give you income in case you can no longer do your work. And so, like I said, there's two different types, the own occupation or any occupation. So if you're a roofer and you have, own occupation, and you can no longer roof, then you qualify and they're going to start paying. But if you have any occupation, you fall off the roof and they're like, yeah, we're not paying because you can, get in your little whatever, scoot up there on your crutches and do some other work. So keep track of what you're signing up for. So disability insurance, individual, employer, and generally when you can go through your employer to get almost any medical insurance, it's a better deal because it's a better deal for the insurance company. They're spreading things out. They have to be concerned when the single person comes up to get insurance that that person might be hiding some sort of condition. When an employer buys it, they can buy in bulk, and it you know eases things. And insurance from Social Security, like I said, there's disability insurance from Social Security is a thing, and it's in competition also with the Medicaid disability, and then workman's compensation. If you don't know, and you are injured, and it happens at the workplace, make sure it's documented and fess up. If you hurt yourself skiing, and you hurt yourself at work, the impact financially on the rest of your life is going to be completely different. If it happens at work, generally you'll have better coverage, but that's got to be documented at the time of the injury. Provisions and then a probationary period. Yep. So again, you got to read the fine print. Can it be canceled or non-cancelable, renewable? So, you're dealing with private insurance, so they can write the terms the way they want. So, that's going to cover that for the insurance portion. Um, Also, there'll be a separate video that's going to have this review for the midterm exam. Here's kind of the highlights. So it's going to be on Blackboard, so you don't have to do a proctor. You're just going to log on to Blackboard. You can go into the assignment section. You're going to find the test. 40 questions, multiple choice, 60-minute time limit. Watch the review video, and it's not going to be math heavy. You don't worry about that, but you could have a calculator. So that's about it.